And it gave me like a really like inferior thing.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, just feeling like I'm less, you're more, because I'm from the hood. But then now, I think no. And not only obviously is it 2 properties in London, one of them's absolutely beautiful and the other one is huge. So it's not just 2 properties in London, it's 2 really good properties in London.
So today we're going to be finding out why a traditional landlord with a buy-to-let portfolio would start doing rent-to-rent and why they would become my student. So listen, thank you for coming on. I know you're one of my students, but I think you've actually got a very interesting story. It was definitely interesting to me personally. I'm sure it'll be interesting to other people as well. So do you just want to give us a little bit about your background, your past career, etc.?
Yeah, so taking it, I suppose, way back to the start, left school at 16, not a GCSE in sight, unfortunately. Something that I used to be really embarrassed about, but now I'm trying, as I get older, I'm trying to own. But yeah, didn't do particularly very well at school. Academia just wasn't for me. But if it came to anything hands-on, working, grafting, I was all for it. So left school at 16, walked into a recruitment agency, not knowing what was next really. And a lot of my friends at that point were going on to do A-levels, and then obviously on to go to university, but I just didn't have the qualifications to do that. So yeah, walked into an agency, just basically said I was looking for work. And for me, the idea at the time was going to be that I'd get a job, I'd redo my GCSEs whilst I was in a job. I think they were called like key skills at that point. So if you didn't get a GCSE, get a key skill. Maybe you'd failed a GCSEs, but you tried again. So to do these key skills. And the plan was to sort of resit that over the first year of being in that job. Started front desk, answering the phone, just greeting people through reception in the agency. They actually offered me a job within the agency, not elsewhere. And lo and behold, I did that for 4 years and just worked through the ranks. So it was no other plan, but I worked through my ranks there. So I was up front desk, then resourcing, then did sales and sort of worked my way through that. And that was in a recruitment agency that did engineering, industrial and driving recruitment, essentially in the Midlands. And after 4 years of doing that, at 21 years old, I thought, I can do this for somebody else. It's time to do it for myself. Very, very, very naively went and set up a recruitment agency at 21.
That's bold then.
Yeah.
Brave.
And yeah, soon learned that being a business owner is a very, very different thing to being a recruiter.
Yes.
Very, very different. But just learned on the job, wore every hat, did every position, did everything that needed to be done to get the business going. And yeah, primarily we operated in manufacturing and engineering. And did that for 10 years. So yeah, from 21 to 31, that was pretty much my whole 20s.
So you managed to keep your own business going there?
Yeah.
From 21 to 01?
Yeah, for 10 years and then sold. So it went then on to a wider group who are a lot bigger than we were in the UK, and they then absorbed our branches into their wider network, essentially. So yeah, the business then went on to be a part of a bigger group, essentially. And that it'd be 3 years this year since, it was absorbed into that bigger brand.
So did you always know you were looking for like a liquidation event at the end of running your business, or was it always?
I suppose one lesson that I learned and that I used to hear people talk about a lot when I had the business, and I didn't really believe it or take it seriously until it got to the point of selling, was that a lot of business owners would say to me, when you start a business, you should always go in with the reason why you're going to exit. And it really spoken about by so many, people that I would be around that were a lot more at the end of their careers or were really successful. They said you should always go in with the plan of how you're going to get out and what you're doing it for. And I think because I went in so young, the coming out was never a thing because I was 21. So it was like I had all the time in the world. And for me, was it ever even really going to take off? Was it ever really going to be a thing? So I never really took that seriously. And then it got to a point where I knew the exit was coming, but I just didn't know how. But how that was what that looked like, really. And I just started to get this feeling that it was time. That, yeah, basically.
What does that mean, though? I mean, this is your baby. You've been growing it, nurturing it for 10 years.
I think the nature of the industry is hard. And now on reflection, I'm very fortunate that I'm grateful how hard it was, because it's not until I look at it now that I realise how hard it actually was. And also, like, the industry, the new sales, all that sort of stuff, it's so cutthroat. Like, that industry is so cutthroat. And I think starting my career there and starting my grounding there, it's gave me loads of grit that I think I wouldn't necessarily have if I hadn't done that job in that industry. But towards the end, we had hundreds of contractors out that were paid every Friday, that were weekly paid. And this was just one small part that I feel, that kind of sticks out in my mind, that running a business is hard. Towards the last few years as well, I had my first daughter. So then, you become a mom and you kind of see the world differently. To put 78 hours in for, in my 20s, that's what I did. I mean, I was up first thing in the morning and I'd be there till you needed to do what I needed to do at night. If weekends needed to be a thing, that was a thing. And then obviously you have a family and it's not just about you anymore. Things change. So that kind of changed my mind slightly. But also, we were paying hundreds of people every Friday, and that's just how payroll works if you do temporary recruitment. For 10 years, I kind of felt like we'd carried the weight of paying people every Friday. And to feel like you've got to pay somebody else's wages to let their life continue on, it's the big thing. Every Friday for 10 years, no matter where I was in the world, whether I was in the business, out the business, on holiday, we had a fantastic, some fantastic payroll girls, and they were absolutely amazing, and they handled it on any issues they just nailed. But I felt like I couldn't really relax until I knew everyone had been paid. That's just how personally I took it and how I am with everything. And it almost felt like carrying a weight all the time. And then it got to a point where I just started on the carry stream.
Fair play.
Yeah.
No, it's a lot. Like I said, people are dependent on you.
And I'd grown up in that. So, I'd left school at 16 years old. Within 2 weeks of leaving school, I'd gone into this recruitment agency, worked there for 4 years. Again, gave it everything. On site at 6 a.m, checking people in. On site at 6 p.m, checking people in. Checking people in at 9 p.m. on a Saturday. Gave it everything, literally everything I had. And then went into my own business and did it all again. And at that point, it was like 15, 16 years of just giving my soul to my career. So yeah, it panned out right at the right time to basically. And also the opportunity arose, I was contacted by somebody else in the industry that I knew that said they were looking to acquire a business or acquire an office in the area we were in. And that they could absorb it into their wider brand. And for me, the fact that the business could continue on after that was, because it could have been the option you just close it, which is unfortunately what happens for a lot of small businesses, especially in the current climate. It's not, I don't know, it sounds like a really old thing to say, but it's not easy to do business in the current climate. And in my opinion, it's only got harder.
Yeah.
So it's the opportunity to arise where my business could then go on to live in a bigger business. Yeah, it was good.
So I've got a couple of questions off the back of that. So I mean, I guess maybe one of them is like, what does it take to be a female boss? From 21, you're hiring people, I'm assuming, from the offset.
Yeah.
Who are probably older than you, whatever the case may be.
Forever.
And you're like,
toward the end, it was. Yeah.
How is that? What's the dynamic like?
Putting it out there really honestly and brutally, how it really felt a lot of the time was if you were strong and you were confident and you were a boss, to a lot of people, you're a bitch. Or, it was like this negative turn on it. Whereas if it was a male that come into the environment and come in strong or whatever, but then you almost then had to be strong, and otherwise you'd be seen as weak, or you'd be seen as a bit of a wallflower, so it's really hard balance between coming across strong enough, confident enough, and with enough conviction that you're respected, you get things done, but also then not coming across too strong where people do think, she's a bit of a bitch, or because I think men don't have that struggle in the same way. I don't believe.
No. I can.
If you come across strong and say, right, guys, this is what we're going to do, kind of thing. He's a strong man. He's a strong leader. Whereas I think for a woman, that balance is a lot harder. But I think there's more. Obviously, we're in a time where there's more female bosses than ever before. Do you know what I mean? 10 years ago, when I started my business, there would have been lots. No, don't get me wrong, but I see more and more of it literally now. But yeah, I think. And having two, at the time of starting, obviously I didn't have my children, but I have 2 daughters, and that for me is an even more of a motivation now to be a strong woman and a role model and inspiration for them. But yeah, and also as women now, we're very, very lucky that we are in a time where we can be female bosses, we can have equal, we can go and do whatever we want, we can, and it's obviously there's a big thing around gender pay gap and stuff like that gap's closing now, and I don't think there's many roles or industries where women aren't doing the same thing that men are doing. So, it's hard, but also it's a massive positive because there's the opportunity to be that now. Because 1950, 1960, you couldn't have been out there being a female boss, doing property, all these things. It would have been a lot harder than it is now.
That's what I'm saying. The reason why I respect you so much is because even 10 years ago, that's what I'm saying. 10 years ago, and as a 21-year-old. There's traditional education.
In the industry.
To go into that and do that is...
Yeah. In the industry that I've been in as well, 1, being recruitment, and 2, being engineering, primarily engineering manufacturing, the board of directors all look the same. Same, I don't know how far we can say these things without getting us...
This is, you can speak freely.
But it's a certain demographic. It's male.
Older white males.
Is a certain age group, yeah. So, yeah, and that's the recruit. That was a lot of the recruitment industry, and also the engineering industry as well. One of the biggest industries in the UK.
Okay, so listen, you were putting in the graft. I think you've kind of alluded to what it takes. It was those coming in at 6, leaving at 9. But I mean, looking back on it, that 10-year graft, was it worth it? Because it was obviously hard, but was it worth it?
Absolutely, 100%. If it wasn't for that 10-year graft, or even the 15-year graft, it wouldn't have set the foundations for today. And I'm a massive, now in my life, I'm a massive advocate for work-life balance. Now I have children, now that I'm married. Before that, absolutely no work-life balance. I lived to work, and that was and it's hard because you want to motivate people, you want to inspire people, you want people to listen and think, oh I can do that, whatever. But to sit and say, oh yeah, you can do it with work-life balance at the beginning, I don't know if you can.
You can't.
And I don't know if it wasn't for me. And also for me, I wasn't academic. I wasn't, the sharpest tool in the shed. So the only thing I really felt I had above everybody else was hard work.
It's graft, yeah.
So it was like, you're smarter than me, you're more academic than me, you're better than me, you won't outwork me.
Yes.
You won't outwork me. And my ability to do things, I've always been very fast at how I do things. You think, I'll just do it now. If you can do it now, you've got the ability to do it now, just do it now. And I've always done, I'm a doer. My husband always says that I live my life in 6 gear. I'm just always, if it can be done, let's not do it tomorrow, let's do it today if we can, to his displeasement. And I would be the first one in the office and the last one out. And, if there was a check-in to be done at a client on a weekend, I'll go and do it at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. That's fine. Because I felt that was my edge, my advantage, because I didn't necessarily have the other things at that point. And I spent many years as well feeling, because I hadn't done very well at school and a lot of my friends had, I always felt like I was on the back foot. So I thought, where can I make up for being on the back foot? And that was work for me. That was outworking majority of people. And I do feel like I spent majority of about all of my 20s years growing up, but working. That was what I did. All my friends will laugh about it. My friends will just say, that's what you ever did, was you just work. So,
but like you said though, it's I guess it was that short-term sacrifice for long-term gain.
Absolutely. So as a result of doing that, it then allowed me in my 20s to make good money. And then when I had, we'd had a good year in the business and stuff like that, I then started edging into property, thinking this is having this business is amazing, but nothing's forever. And I didn't necessarily want it to be forever. So I knew then at that point I needed to start investing elsewhere. You have so many years talk about having multiple streams of income, and also being self-employed from 21. I didn't have this fantastic pension that I'd been paying into. So I'm thinking at this point now, it's a long way away, but I need something at 65 because I haven't, like now, pension, for a lot of companies or a lot of people our generation, if you're working in the business, they're giving you a nest pension, which is the standard government one. Back in the day, if you go and work for a big conglomerate like a British Gas, the pensions were fantastic. So, you could retire, and then also, who wants to retire at 67? But anyway, and then you'd have a pension, which was fantastic. I don't know, in the industry that I'm in, or was in, that wasn't a thing. It was very basic pensions. And then I was self-employed and I hadn't been paying into pension. So I thought, there is no pot for the future other than, the house that I'm living in that I've bought. And I'm making good money now, but I don't just want to live off that money and spend all that money. And then at 65, it's like, yeah, you've had a great career, you had loads of money, but there's nothing for the future. And then I got to a point where, having sacrificed so many hours for my career and then having my daughter, I don't want to sacrifice the same amount of hours anymore.
Yes.
I want things to be more passive.
Yeah, listen, that's a big thing. I think when you've got a business, you can't forget the fact of you need to convert your active income into passive income. Like, you have to invest the money that you're making. Otherwise, you are going to be setting yourself up for failure. Like you said, with businesses, we don't get pensions per se. Like, if, we're CEOs of our own business, we're the boss of whatever it is that we're doing, but we need to put plans in place for our future.
Absolutely.
So like investing in things for the future, property, the market, whatever it may be, like you said, like,
yeah.
I think that's probably some of the pros and cons people don't think about. Obviously, there's this thing, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. They want to have their own business. They want to escape a job, maybe because they're working hard in something, to want to become a boss. But then
they ain't easy.
They don't always take into consideration all the things that it takes to be a boss. Like, we don't get holiday pay. We don't get like a pension, for example. But I mean, listen, for me, I would always choose business every single time.
Do you ever switch off?
No.
Ever?
No. So,
other than being unconscious in sleep, and then you open your eyes. Other than that, if you do sleep, that is, do you start to switch off?
I tell you what, though, obviously, later on down the line, like 20s, no. But now holidays are something I take very, very seriously. And when I'm on holiday, I really am on holiday and I will enjoy myself. I mean, but also though, the business that we're building, this one, which is different to the business that you had. A business in property, you can get paid in your sleep. You can get paid when you're away. And so that's the thing which I love about it. It's not a traditional business. We're getting the benefits of property investment and the passivity that comes with it. But at the same time, we're still going to work. We're still going to put in the graft. But I mean, because you had an example, right? When you messaged me, I think you said you were sat at home, like watching a movie, and then like a booking came in and something. And you were like, this is brilliant.
I don't know what. One sec. You pause that. But yeah, that's obviously the property side of it. Has for sure created more passive income, and also towards the end of the business as well. Once I'd had a team, that was always switched on, but then, there's a team of people working within the business, and there's, a couple hundred contractors out. I suppose there's an element of it that it was passive in the sense of I couldn't have done all that.
Yes.
But it still required me. That makes sense. But yeah, the property has been the most passive thing I've done by far in my career, for sure.
And you were smart, like you said. Whenever there was a good year, you'd take a chunk, put it into.
And obviously, my property journey started, and still obviously is primarily a big chunk of it was traditional buy-to-let, and buy-to-let for me has been extremely passive, because I've been very lucky and I've had good tenants. They go in, I didn't hear anything for a year.
Yeah, which is how it could be.
Yeah, the margins obviously on buy-to-let aren't as great as they used to be, but yeah, unless there's a problem, which the majority of my portfolio had been made up of buy, renovate and rent out. A majority of the house was brand new, so brand new boilers, brand new rads, pipe work, whatever, electric. So the house had been done to a good standard. So then I would put a tenant in, but I hear from them for a year.
That's actually something to speak about. So obviously you've gone from building a business, liquidation event and exit. During that time, you're investing in property, traditionally buy-to-lets. I'm assuming you probably did some investment after selling in the 3 years that followed. And then now you've come to rent. So tell me, like, what motivated that switch?
So if I just take it sort of, I started investing in property whilst I still had the business. So the last few years, I want to say probably the last 3-4 years of the business, then my mind started ticking into money needs to go into property now. Again, one thing that I don't feel A, as a woman, and B, as somebody from a low income background, what's investment? Why would you invest? So I started to educate myself then about we should be investing and women should be investing. Because again, for me, like investment, one, wasn't something people did where I lived, and two, wasn't something that women did either. So then I started to sort of try and learn, just self-educate around the best investments, ways to invest, look at the future. So then it was just traditional buy-to-let. So I just bought a few traditional buy-to-lets. And it was a way of basically thinking, well, that's a lump sum of money that I don't want in my hands, but I need to put it somewhere where it's going to grow. So, traditional buy-to-lets were good. And also at that point in my career, I was still within the business. So they allowed me to be hands-off from my portfolio and still continue to work in the business and focus on the business. And then I just used like a PA to just manage any sort of, if there was any issues or tenancy renewals. So that was kind of like it was a side hustle at that point. And then when I decided to exit the business nearly 3 years ago, that's when I thought I'm going to take it more seriously now and really go for it. And obviously as a result of the funds from the sale of the business, then it was a way to pump more money into property. So I did more buy-to-lets. And then I kind of started to get this feeling that the amount of money that was being invested into a property was a lot for what I was really getting back.
For the return, yeah.
And again, speaking to other landlords in the industry that had been doing it for 30, 40, 50 years, they're like, what you could make even 10, 15 years ago is double what you would make now. And obviously the margins have just got tighter and tighter. So interest rates have gone up with mortgages. So even 4 years ago, you could get a mortgage on 1.5, 1.9 foot settlement, borderline free money. Stamp duty was lower. Regulations were a lot more relaxed. So you've gone from 1.9% interest rates, 3% stamp duty. I think it was even lower than that at one point, not in my journey of property investment. And then your initial deposit amount, in the percentage of that was lower. And now we're looking at, in a limited company, you're looking at 6.6% interest rate, 25% deposit, 5% stamp duty. Do the math. It's a lot of money to get in to a buy-to-let. It's a hell of a lot of money. And then by the time your mortgages come out, probably only an interest-only mortgage, then you've paid your landlord's insurance, you've put your money aside for your boiler breaking down, and then you've paid your tax at the end of the year. What's the point?
Yeah.
And then if you come to sell it, any gains you've made, if you had it 10 years, then it's doubled, you want to tax that as well. So, and also bearing in mind, I've paid tax on the initial investment, on my wages, on my dividends. I pay tax then. Yeah. So I've paid tax then you want me to pay tax on my annual profits of anything I make from it. And then when I sell it, any profit. What's the point?
Yeah. Sounds like a scam.
Starting to get a bit technical and go a bit deep, and I've digressed from the question. But for me, when I started doing the math and started, really because even initially getting into property, I didn't understand it at the level I do now. I just thought it was a good place to put my money. It gets me a return. But actually, when you start digging deeper, so then for me, then my mind started to tick to think, I've got a good portfolio of property. But if I look at the amount of equity that's sat in that portfolio, what it pays monthly I don't think equate very well. So then I started thinking, is there a better place for my money? Because with the current regulations, tax system, blah, blah, and the direction it's going, obviously it's not getting better. We've just seen an increase from 3% to 5%. It's not going to, I don't think it's going to get any easier. I don't think it's going to get any better. And also the positive of that is, I think, from what I've learned, is when the interest rates got so low, I think a lot of people got into property that probably shouldn't have got into property. So
They couldn't afford it.
And then when things have gone wrong for landlords, you hear a lot of people talk about they're living in damp or mold or in bad conditions because the landlord hasn't got the money to be able to look after their portfolio of property the way that they should. Because if you've got a 1.5%, mortgage rate, there is borderline free money. Anyone can get into property then with a low entry point. So the entry point's a lot higher now, which means landlords have to be a lot better, have to be certain individuals. But I think it's great to protect the tenant. But as the landlord, it's not good for me. It's no good for me. So then my head started to tick to think, well, I think I've got a good portfolio sat there that's got good equity in it. I just don't think the ratio of what I'm making out of it is good for the amount of money that's sat there, which is why rent to rent then became a thing for me to consider.
I think when you look at it as an investment vehicle, I always say it's like hundreds of thousands in for hundreds of pounds per month out.
Absolutely.
And that's the part which just doesn't equate for me.
No.
There's still a lot of value in it. Like it's never a case of investing in property is bad.
It's still a fantastic place.
It's still amazing. But are you trying to make a lot of money per month? Like, do you want to be able to have job, time, freedom, these kind of things? Traditional property investing nowadays is not going to give you that. That's just the reality.
No. And that's what I started to, I think when I was in the business still, because I was so focused on the business, I wasn't really looking for any profitability out of the buy-to-lets. It was kind of a vehicle for the money to sit in, and just knowing that money was in a better place in the properties than it would have been in my bank. So I didn't give it too much time or attention. I just thought, well, it's better there than it is in my bank. Kate's making a couple of £100 a month. Save that, keep that there for if any issues go wrong, or reinvest it into another property. And also because I'd always at that point bought, run down, refurbished, then rented out, I'd had equity I could pull out and buy another one. So again, at that point, I didn't pay it too much attention. It wasn't until then, obviously, I was no longer a part of the business, and I started to think, right, okay, well, what next? What's my next opportunity? What does my next step look like? Then I thought, that doesn't seem like a lot. And then every time I'm applying for another mortgage, the interest rate's going up, not coming down. Then you're hearing things like, it's going from 3% to 5% stamp duty. And then even just buying landlord's insurance, that's going up. And it's like everything's going up. But what I'm making each month isn't going up in the same ratio. Yeah, rents have massively gone up, but not to the extent of what it's costing a landlord to be a part of it. And a lot of landlords have exited as a result. I know so many landlords that have got huge portfolios that have just gone, do you know what? I'm out. Because they've seen life 10, 15, 20 years ago where you could make 3 times what you're making now. But yeah, the math just didn't make sense. So it was a way to be more profitable. With the initial thought was, how can I be more profitable with the properties I've already got? But obviously then the next step is, how can you be profitable from properties that you don't actually own?
I think that's the thing, is like everything you're doing, because you do Airbnb on one of your own properties, right? So it's like, okay, cool. You're seeing what you can potentially make with that, but you're well aware of how much money you had to put in, being substantially more. Whereas you could just rent the same apartment, house, whatever it may be, and do exactly the same thing. Your margins are, of course, going to be better. It's just maths. Like there's no
100%. Any property as well that, obviously, the property that I own that I first started with Airbnb is just outside of London, which was my first purchase that was like close to London. So for me, I was like, what, for a 2-bed apartment? Are we serious? Is that actually how much a 2-bed apartment costs? How come could buy a block of apartments in America for that. But the investment that's in there, and not just that one, but that one, because it was so much money for a 2-bed apartment, but the amount of money that's in there, even just to get my deposit back would probably take me 15 years.
Mad.
Like, even though I'm making good money on Airbnb with it, because there's, if you look at it to say, I want my initial investment back, i.e. your deposit, so that would be your 25% deposit, your 5% stamp duty, with solicitors' fees, whatever that looks like. How long is it going to take to make that money back into your pot? Whereas some rent-to-rent deals, 3 to 4 months, you've got your initial investment back.
There you go.
You're looking at 15 years. And don't get me wrong, obviously it's hard to compare. You've got your investment in that property and it is growing and it is, but yeah, it could take you 10, 15, 20 years just to get the initial investment back into your bank, unless you were to sell it.
That's the thing as well.
Whereas rent to rent, you don't need to do that.
I think people also underestimate, and I think, listen, even though you've invested in the property and it's yours, the bank treat it like it's theirs. Like the property that you've got, if you've got a mortgage on it, it technically belongs to the bank. People assume like, oh yeah, I've got this property, no issues, I'll be able to pull money out, or I'll be able to do this and I'll be able to do that. Then you go to the bank says, oh no, sorry, your job, I don't know, or you've now had a child, you've got an extra dependent, so therefore now we can't look at your income and affordability in the same way. Or, oh look, what's this on your statement? And they can start knocking you down. Suddenly they're like, okay, listen, you could afford to borrow this when you first moved into this place or you first acquired it, but now you can't. And so the game has changed. That 50 grand or 30 grand you think you can pull out, sorry, we're only actually going to give you 10. And then you're like, oh wow, so it's not my money after all.
Absolutely. And that, for me, the buy process, that's the worst part of it.
I hate
That's the thing that I
think as business owners, people, it is low-key probably one of the worst things. If you're PAYE and your circumstances haven't changed, they'll love you. If you're someone like our self-employed business owners, it is a lot more colourful.
That I had this conversation with a friend literally like yesterday. She gave me as like a scenario. She said, would you take a loan in your own name at 10% APR, or would you take a loan if somebody else had offered it to you at 18%, but you've got to pay the 18% out, but it's not in your name, you haven't got to go through the process. And I was at 18% all day. She was like, that's mad. I said, because that's how much I dislike the process of trying to apply for a mortgage, a loan, any kind of credit, which is obviously if you're looking to own property, it's a big part of the process. But it's a part of the process that, yeah. Whereas again, in rent to rent, it's something you circumvent, you don't need to do.
You completely circumvent that. That is actually the beauty. You don't need to worry about all those things which can hold you back when it comes to buying a place. So I know people may be thinking this, if you're an established landlord and you've got your own portfolio and you're even doing Airbnb in one of your houses prior to, what did you need me for? What was the reason for taking me on as a mentor?
For me, the biggest benefits, which I've seen more so since you becoming my mentor, is I needed something that was an extension of me. That the two recent properties that I've taken on have been in the London area, so they've been closer to you than they have been to me in the Midlands. And if it wasn't for you, A, being my mentor, and B, being based where you are, I wouldn't have been able to take on those properties. You've done viewings for me. You've helped me sell apartments, helped me buy stuff for apartments. There's no part of the job that
last minute run to tool station.
B&Q.
Yeah.
Pushing the jockey around B&Q for me. What do you think of this Landy? But there's all this stuff I can do on my own. I have done on my own, but you've done that for me in London in a location that there's times where I haven't been available to get to London to do a viewing. So for me, somebody who is very particular and anal about things, you've been an extension of me in a location I've not been able to be in, and also done the job at a level that I would do it at. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I've always prided myself on, when you go in to meet investors on my behalf and looking at properties for me, negotiating, all that sort of stuff. You've been able to do that for me when I've not been able to be there. And then not only be me in this situation, then been able to guide me on the finances, the contract, all the other side of it, and hold my hand in and be the boost of confidence that I've needed a lot of the time. So yeah, there's been so many benefits to that. And I think, yeah, it's not just you're on the phone and it's a once a week call. It's if I'm coming down to London and I need you, you're there. And you're there pulling out duvets, doing it, because running a business, a business like this, it's one thing meeting the investor, I'm doing the contracts and doing the keys and doing the senior level stuff. It's another thing saying, right, we need to put a duvet on the bed and get the picture. It's top to bottom. So for me, it's been like having a team member, a real good team member that's got my back. And obviously, like I say, location's been unbelievably beneficial because I've been in the Midlands, been too busy to get down to London. 2 opportunities have cropped up. Dean, can you go look at these properties tomorrow with this investor? Yeah, no problem. And I'm sending you there with the ultimate confidence that he's going to have confidence in us to give us those properties. And we did get the properties. Yeah. But it could have been, I'm not available for that opportunity when it's arose. I've sent somebody else there and the investor's not felt comfortable in giving those keys over. And he very much did and has said he'll give us more opportunities. So for me, that's been, it is a mentorship, and I am a student here, but it's been like a business partner and a colleague and a team member and a team player at the same time for me.
Listen, that's why, I call this the blueprint-based property partner program.
Absolutely.
I love that you felt that, because that is exactly what I'm trying to build here. Yeah. I want people, it's not about mentor, student, we are business partners.
And that's very much how I felt. And I said it when we first met as well, that this side of it is the newer side of the property business for me. But things like I am going to go on holiday in the next few months and feeling like, actually, Dean, can you support me in that process? Because I'm not very good at switching off. When I do struggle to switch off. So having you going, well, actually, I can help you with X, Y, and Z, and feeling like I'm confident enough to, ask for your support, lean on you, hand things over when I'm not somebody that does that very lightly.
I remember you saying,
because my standards of how I like things to be are very, very high. And I think you have got a similar sort of look on things as well. And yeah, it has, for me, it's very much been a partnership, even though it is a mentorship at the same time. So yeah, been immeasurable. And obviously for me, I'm at a different place to maybe some of his students, but from a landlord point of view, you kind of think, why would a landlord go into a rent to rent when you've already got property? And one being profitability was the biggest step, really. And then, the mentorship is then accelerated a new part of my business. It's really sped up, and things that, I have sort of been like, oh, I'm unsure of. You've come in with conviction and just been like, no, this is a good deal, or that's not such a good deal, or let's look at it like this. These are the opportunities. And yet you've very much been my confidence in a lot of scenarios where I haven't had the confidence in this area, so to speak.
Okay, so since starting with me, what's been your biggest highlight and your biggest booking?
Biggest highlight has definitely been taking on 2 properties in central London. When we first met and talked about the mentorship, my thinking at that point was that I was going to do Birmingham city centre, and London seemed like a bit of a pipe dream at that point because I'm not in the location. And also when we ever reran the numbers on Birmingham properties, the numbers just felt for me a lot lower. The entry point was a lot lower, but the profitability on the properties always just felt a little bit lower. So I feel like we were always kind of comparing, this is what it could be in London, but this is what it is in the properties I was looking at Birmingham. So then when the opportunity came up, we created the opportunity to take on 2 in central London. It was kind of like I'd gone straight to what had been a bit of a dream, and been like, right, we've gone slap bang in London. And not only obviously is it 2 properties in London, one of them's absolutely beautiful and the other one is huge. So it's not just 2 properties in London, it's 2 really good properties in London. So I think that's been the highlight. And we started talking, Christmas happened, and I found myself feeling a little bit stagnant because I was struggling to find properties during that period because everyone was kind of winding down for Christmas, so to speak. And then it was like 2 of these gems just dropped. It was like, right, okay, this is why we're doing this. And that was a massive highlight, and it gave me the kick to say, no, this is something you should definitely be exploring for sure. So that's probably the biggest highlight. And then biggest booking, £41,000.
Yeah. Listen, we both.
The highlight. Yeah.
And how many days was that?
157 days.
41k. Wow.
41k.
Some people's annual salary. That's wild.
Yeah, for 5 minutes. So yeah, 2 big highlights there.
2 big ones here.
There's many more, but yeah.
Many more to come, but listen, I'll take that all day long. Okay, so obviously people know, like I started off and I did 3 mentorings in my first month.
How was that, Dean?
Yeah, I'll be honest, at one point I thought like I was going to die. At one point I was lying on the sofa thinking, Dean, what have you done here, mate? Just because...
And I'm so glad you told me that story, because when I lay there and thought I was going to die, knowing you thought you were going to die made me feel better.
Because the thing is, it is a lot. It's a new venture. You've invested money financially. You put in a lot of time, effort, and energy. And of course, it's that point of, I guess, max risk versus max reward. You're at the precipice of it. You haven't yet come over the other side. So you're going to have a lot of emotion. I'm not saying the emotion is valid. I'm just saying there is going to be a lot of emotion. And it's perfectly normal if people are feeling like that. I just have to say that because I've felt that. What's been your experience? Because you've obviously taken on 2 within 1 month. So
just to touch on something you said then, there's a lot of emotion and not necessarily valid. It's a massive point. And the mentorship has helped me manage that emotion, valid or not valid. So that's just to touch on that because you've said that. Because yeah, we build a lot of fear for ourselves that a lot of the time isn't valid. And that's one thing that the mentorship's really helped me with, is when there's times where I thought, I'm going to die. He's told me I'm not, and that we're okay. And that it's normal to feel that way. And then you think, oh, okay. And it helps you hold your nerve there, because that's what you have to do. Yeah. But yeah, so didn't take on 3, not as many as you took on 2 in the first month. Not essentially in the first month of starting,
just
in 1 month. Yeah, my first month of then actually actively doing it, there was 2. And it's been a lot. It's been a lot. It's very overwhelming. Like I said, like you said, there's a lot of emotion that comes with it. You've made this large investment, and I'm used to investing in things that I've brought. So then to make this big investment for something that I haven't necessarily brought, and then it's like, now hold your nerve. Now, not let go, but do your groundwork, do your due diligence, find a good investment, make that investment, put all your furnishings in, make it look lovely, take your pictures, put it on the site. Now trust the process.
Yes.
And then it's like, whoa. And just there again, right, has it been booked? Has it been booked? Has it been booked? How many nights?
Constantly refreshing, yep.
Oh.
But then what's the feeling like when those first bookings start coming in?
You can't influence words. Like I literally like, jump on the spot, couldn't you? You just like spring up and down, like so excitable. Yeah, and it does give you an element of excitement that you don't get with traditional like steps. Like because you give your keys over, your tenant goes in, it's like, if you've got any issues, let me know. Yeah. Whereas with this, it's like it's a bit of a roller coaster and there's times where like I've sat at a dinner table with my husband in the evening, and he's like, "So how many bookings you had today then?" And I'm like, "Look at you asking questions." And I scroll, and I'm like, "We've actually had 6, and that's actually $4,000." Like. And I've actually looked at it and thought, bloody hell. And like we had the conversation when I was sat home just watching a film, and my phone's like pinging at the corner, and I'm like, just leave it, because you're watching a film. And I'm like, I can't. 1 second, you're gonna have to pause it. And then in a 2-hour film, I don't know, over £1,000 worth of bookings come in while I'm literally watching a film. And that's obviously, that is passive income. Don't get me wrong, there's been lots of groundwork and investment that's gone in to get to that point. But once you've done that, and obviously there's continuous improvement of the listing and the property, etc. But the majority of work's going to be at the beginning. And once you've done that and you've done that well, the amount of work obviously reduces. But yeah, to be sit there and watch the film and £1,000 worth of bookings comes in whilst I'm trying to watch the film. Even walking in here today, £1,100 booking as I'm walking into this room. Yeah, it's what else can you do in the
That's that
setting?
quality boss shit that I know.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously we've explored other options with other properties, and looking at HMOs at the properties and stuff like that. and then we've got viewings going on today, and I'm here now doing this with you, and then you've put me in contact with somebody that can go do the viewings for me, and you know, you said to me today, it said that's how you run a property business. And it's like, yeah, being able to make money or potentially make money or arrange viewings, and I'm here now doing this. Meanwhile, my Airbnb is getting booked in all around the country, and somebody else is doing viewings for me in London for a potential HMO. And I'm here now, you know, that's truly passive, because I could be here now, I could be at home with my kids, could be on holiday. And that's, you know, if you are going into the business for passive income, that's, you know, that's what it is.
Let's just discuss a little bit about who rent to rent would best suit, because I do get asked this question sometimes. Do they need anything? Are there any requirements, experience, education, these kind of things in terms of what they need to get started? So what do you think?
I think rent to rent is a viable option for anybody, literally anyone. There is no, I don't think there's a set criteria. I think property as a whole is like that. Obviously, when you get into the realm of buying property, it's more difficult.
100%.
But from a rent to rent point of view, there's no criteria, there's no formal education needed. I think the main thing is the drive, the being prepared to work hard, do what you need to do to get your first property, to furnish your first property. And like we said earlier, from a finance point of view, you deposit in your first month upfront and some soft furnishings depending on the property you take on. If you don't have that funds available, ask a family member, go and get a loan, you know, use somebody else's money to start your business and use a credit card for your soft furnishings. That's the logical thing to do. And then if you, like I say, if you don't have those initial funds, lend the funds, whether that be bank, friends, whatever that looks like. And you're in it. You've just got to work hard and then get it online and then use the finance from the bookings to pay that initial investment back. And now you started your business with somebody else's money. Obviously, we've been very fortunate to be in a position where we've had businesses that have allowed us to have the resources, but we have had to necessarily go and lend the deposits, so to speak, or whatever. But for lots of people, they will be in a position where, you know, they are using other people's funds or to get the business off the ground. And when I started my business at 21, that's exactly what I did, using somebody else's money to fund the initial start of the business. So great if you've got your first month's upfront deposit and first month for rent. Great. If you haven't, go lend it. So the entry point is very low, but the criteria of the individual, I don't think you need any education. I think your economic background makes no difference. I think it's all mindset and attitude, really, that it's the main things. And if you've got them, you're in.
If anything has resonated with you today and you want to join the Blueprint, my property partner program, then just leave Blueprint in the comments below.